Several actuators are controlled using analog voltage. That's a common thing. So to completely control them, to make them do everything they need to do, you need to supply an analog voltage to them. For instance, a DC motor, the speed of the motor is controlled by the analog voltage that it receives. So if you give it more voltage, it'll go faster and so on. An LED, you can control it in binary, 0, 1, but you can also give it an analog voltage to make it brighter or dimmer. Heating element, so for instance, like in a toaster, hot wire, that type of thing, it's going to heat up it'll output as much heat as it gets. So if you increase the voltage, it'll have more energy, so it'll make it hotter. So there are a lot of devices like this, a lot of actuators like this that require a voltage, an analog voltage. But an Arduino cannot generate an analog voltage. Arduinos can do digital write, which is digital voltage, right? But outputting an analog voltage, now there is a function called analog write, and I will describe this function. But it does not directly produce an analog voltage on the output. So say you want to output 2.5 volts on one of the pins, you can't do that with an Arduino or with a microcontroller inside an Arduino. Now, and actually most microcontrollers don't have that ability. Now, I should say that an Arduino Due, which is a more expensive Arduino, I believe it can output analog directly, but it is very common that components can't output analog directly. Now, one way to fix that is to buy a digital to analog converter, which I think is actually probably on the Arduino Due. It's a separate chip, a separate integrated circuit that you can connect to your microcontroller. And it'll take, actually we show a schematic of it up there, it'll take a set of digital inputs, like in this case it's an 8-bit number, so 8 digital inputs, zeros and ones, and it'll output an analog voltage value according to those digital inputs. So for instance, if you want to output, this is a rough approximation of what would happen, say you want to output 3 volts on the analog output. So you would drive the digital inputs with the number 3 in binary, right, which is 1, 1. Right? You drive that, and then the analog output would be 3 volts. So it takes the digital inputs and converts it to an equivalent analog value. So if you have one of these chips, you can interface that with the Arduino, whatever microcontroller it is, and get analog voltage values. Most microprocessors do not have, most microcontrollers anyway, don't have these built in, but you can add a separate chip and attach it, wire it up. We'll talk about things like that later. But it might be expensive, might cost you, because you have to buy the digital analog converter and connect it up. It might be a little bit complicated, but that can certainly be done. But that's a more expensive option. Usually that's not necessary. Thank you.